Yeah, I like that. You got
Yeah.
way more rhythm with the than I do. Welcome back for another live Soul Connection call. I am so delighted to have Allie here with me today because we are both book lovers, book writers, book mamas, all of that good stuff. So go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah. Hey, world. I am Allie. I publish under AY, and my birth name is Alyssa. So you can find me under one of those things. Call me anything you like as long as it's nice. I am the founder and CEO of The Right Place, Right Time. I like to classify that as my virtual boutique of professional writing services, where I predominantly operate in the space and capacity as a book coach and ghostwriter on an international basis. And I also happen to be the award winning author of Dear Universe, I Get It Now, Letters on the Art and Journey of Being Brave and Being Me. And that is me professionally in a nutshell. In a personal space, I live in Vermont. I'm a wife, I'm a mom. I love maple lattes. I love the F word. I like getting lost in bookstores. The Princess Bride is my favorite movie. And I am a huge Christmas fan.
Thank you. I love that beautiful overview of just all of you, like in a little bubble. So, I'm Safrianna Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide. I am author of Bumblebees and White Balloons, and I am a transformational coach, a visionary leader, CEO of Living Luna. I'm just on a mission to uplift the others of the world and make this a more inclusive and happy place to be. It's not super happy right now. I'm a cat mom, angel number lover. It's 1 2 3 4 where I am right now. Uh, so
Yeah, me
yay.
too. Okay.
And yeah, we'll start with that. So you and I met, I don't even know how at this point. I think someone networked us together. We hopped on a call. There was a ton of synergy. We got to talking about books. We are both Alyssa's at birth. Fun fact.
Love it.
And so we just have a lot in common. We also like funky glasses, so why not have a conversation? So we called this episode "The Brave, the Book, the Business" because I think it encapsulates our overlapping areas of major interest very well. And you got into the ghostwriting space. I started in the ghostwriting space. Very few people know this. My first ghostwritten piece, I was 18 years old, and this like 45-year-old woman hired me to be a ghostwriter because she was trying to be a parenting coach. And she's like, my specialty is in parenting teens. You're a teen, write about parenting teens. So it was literally me writing my real world teen perspective from the perspective of an adult. It was very interesting. So, how did you get into ghostwriting?
First of all, before I even dive into my story, I find it really compelling or curious, both, that an adult would ask a teenager to write a parenting book if that teenager has not yet parented. Like, I get the whole, like, you had the teenager perspective because you were living that experience, but like to write it from a parenting, like, how?
It was a very interesting, yeah. I think I applied for the job and I straight up told her I'm 18 and like I know what it's like to be a teen, and which, to be fair, by that point I'd done quite a bit of parenting, unfortunately, but I hadn't parented
Okay,
teens because I had literally raised my younger siblings
got it.
and all of that good stuff. So I had some parenting experience, but obviously not of teenagers. So I was really just writing like the way I would have been like to have been treated as a teen and the dignity and respect that I would have liked.
Yeah,
So,
okay, I
but
dig that.
apparently it did really well. So,
Hey, well, there you go. A testament to your wonderful, brilliant brain, which I know has always been a thing, even though I don't know you that well yet.
yet,
Yet.
yet.
Because we are manifesting good shit for 2024.
Yes, we're manifesting it. That writing retreat in
We're
Vermont.
manifesting it. Okay, so the question was, how did I get into my own ghostwriting path? So, I'm trying to think of what's the short version. The short version is that when I started my business, The Right Place, Right Time, in 2018, I originally started by doing all of the writing things. Like, I just said yes to everything because I really wanted to leave my day job, and I knew I needed to get out of there within a certain amount of months or my soul might completely splinter off from my body altogether. And so in that beginning iteration of my business, I just said yes, 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 yes to all things. probably by the end of the first year, I recognized what I liked to write and what I didn't like to write, started to narrow down my services. But the other thing that came to my attention within those first 12 months was that I was essentially ghosting other people's stuff. But in my mind, I had always believed that ghostwriting was like just books. And when I really sat back and thought on it, it was like, no, like all of these newsletters, all of these emails, all of these lead magnets, all these blog posts, LinkedIn articles that I was writing predominantly for coaches, consultants, speakers, really entrepreneurs, was writing directly to their audience from their perspective as if I were them. I was capturing their voice, their brand, their messaging, like all the things. And I was like, oh, this is ghostwritten content. It's just of a different type.
Yeah.
And then in 2020, as I was working on Dear Universe, I Get It Now, one of those clients who I had been serving since the earliest days of my business. So I had started working with her in 2018, and then it's like we're in 2019, we're heading towards 2020. She said to me, I really think it's time that I write my first business book. Will you ghost it for me? And I was like, yes, because I was still in the yes mode of all things. And I was like, sure, like I'm loving writing mine. I'm like finally doing the thing that I have always wanted to do. And so it was really natural to ghost hers because I had already been writing her content, already writing in her voice, and I could draw from all kinds of material that already existed.
Right.
And that was really where I got my first taste for ghosting other people's books, but not necessarily like, obviously the ghosting, the long form content was already a thing. So it was a natural progression. It was an organic thing that kind of happened. And once my book came out and then her book came out shortly after that, I was just like on the high of like, oh, this is exactly where I should be. And ironically, what also happened simultaneously was in that same span of those two books, I got connected to a woman who wanted to write a memoir and was looking for somebody to guide her. She did not want to ghost. She wanted to do it herself. And the person who connected us felt like it was kind of a divine match. This woman who connected us was in the intuitive space. So we both trusted her kind of intuition on that one. And sure enough, it was a perfect match. We embarked on a journey together, and that client's book came out in October of 2022. And that was really where I started to pivot towards ghosting and book coaching. And I left all of the content writing behind.
Wow. So yeah, it really has been a progression, and you've expanded through all of that, like into greater and greater heights. And that's when I look at this title of this episode, The Brave, the Book, the Business, and I think about my own writing journey. It really is an expansion journey, the writing journey, whether you start in ghostwriting or you start with your own piece. The process of using your voice and words is tremendously expansive. And there's so much I've realized over the last year and a half about what writing does for your business, what having a book on the shelf does for your business, what it does not just for your visibility, but for your strategy, for your growth plans. So when you coach, like, are there specific things that you coach clients around that you really love? Like, do you love to do the visibility coaching? Do you love to do more of the strategy? Do you love to do it all?
I would say that, so I see writing as being three parts. They're like one third of writing is mindset, one third is the actual writing itself, and another third is like, education.
Yeah.
Publishing and platform education, or strategy. I would probably classify those things under strategy, because you need to know how you're intending to use your book, what route you're intending to publish with, or take, what route to take, and then how you're going to promote that book, right? I find that when people come to work with me, they don't consider themselves writers, they're aspiring authors, which are not the same thing. And that's not discrediting anybody or saying that one is better than the other, but it's just about what you know. When you're somebody, I think, who classifies yourself as a writer, and you've classified yourself that way for a really long time, you've likely dipped your toe in that space already and have a general understanding of the writing process, where you might publish, those types of things. When you're an aspiring author who doesn't identify as a writer, you usually know nothing.
Right. That is so true.
know nothing. And so you're like, I feel tapped or called or nudged to write a book, but I am terrified and I'm scared. I'm overwhelmed because I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't
Yep.
know where to start. I have no idea if my book is relevant, all these things. So as a coach, I find that my role is just as important in helping them navigate a very wide and complicated space as it is to actually help them with the idea itself and then their confidence around the idea. And so, really, I'm touching on all three of those areas in my work with them so that they feel controlled, confident, and empowered throughout the process, in addition to actually developing a book that will mean something to them and mean something to others on the other side.
Yeah, and I love that because, I've been in a couple multi-authored books and done a couple, different projects throughout the years, and I work with Jess Verrill of House of Indigo Publishing for the multi-authored for the most part, and her process is so much different than the other people I've worked with because there's coaching and energetics work and PR and marketing and all this, which I'm hearing you do too, which is super like I'm like, yes. Because when there are a lot of, I mean, and even big publishing houses are kind of like this. They're just like, yeah, we'll just do it. You give us your stuff and you go over there. And there's so much more to actually becoming the author than just handing over your manuscript. There's so much mindset stuff that has to happen. I remember that my first multi-authored project was my debut of using my own name in my writing, because before then I had actually published some things, but I was doing it under a pen name. I was doing it under various online aliases. I could not be seen as me, and now I have this book here that is literally me in a nutshell. Even though it's fiction, I mean, the book it's semi-autobiographical. It has my real name on it. It has resources in the back, which is something I'm passionate about, and discussion questions, like because I had full control over the development of it. And that's something that when you're working with someone like you get to really get into, like, what do you want in this book that shows who you are as a person? Because a book it's really like a child.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because this book, of course, is about the semi-autobiographical part is my pregnancy loss.
Mm-hmm.
And then I birthed this book, and that's literally, those are the words that came through for me, was, you are birthing this book and this is my baby book.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is this very tender and vulnerable process of putting your words out there.
Yeah. Well, especially those autobiographical pieces, I think so. Dear Universe, I Get It Now also has a chapter on my miscarriage. So I don't know if I ever shared that with you separately, but I miscarried my second pregnancy. And interestingly enough, I got through most of the drafts of Dear Universe, I Get It Now. And when I read it again, the latest time or whatever, last time, I realized this thing went in chronological order and I totally skipped over my miscarriage.
Wow.
And I got that tap, like, hello, you're missing kind of a big critical moment here. But I recognized that when I was going through those drafts the first couple of times, I wasn't ready yet.
Yes.
And then when I got through to those final drafts and I was looking at it more objectively from my editorial lens, I went, you can't do this. You cannot leave out this part of the story, because
Right.
I had dipped it into like the introduction to the reader or something and then didn't touch it again. And I was like, you can't say it there and then skip over it entirely when it was a part of this really critical moment in time where everything shifted and my life went a completely different direction. And so I ended up having to put in that chapter, and I bawled through the whole thing, but man, was it so healing. Yes. And so cathartic. And I thought by the time I was done, this especially matters because it's one of those things that we still don't talk enough about in our community, local, national, global. And it's the vulnerable pieces, the personal story pieces, the autobiographical pieces. Those are the pieces that have so much heart in a piece of work that ultimately resonate and connect with your readers, because they are also living a human experience.
Yes. And we do a disservice to our audience when we won't do the work within ourselves to be able to come forward with those things. Because every time I share an authentic story, an authentic story, keyword there, right? Not every time I share a story, but every time I share an authentic story where I'm not trying to bypass, I'm not trying to hide, I'm not trying to sugarcoat, that's when people are like, oh my gosh, I resonate with you, right? We
Yeah.
resonate with the realness of our human experience, not with these super polished, pristine, we don't go into the messy, we don't touch the shadow, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what we need to bring to the forefront more than ever before. And I'm so glad to be surrounded all of a sudden by people like you who are willing to go there, right? Even though you had your own process of like,
Mhm.
do I, right? And we all go through that. That's part of the process is it feels really uncomfortable, but then when we do and we lean into that uncomfortable area, there truly is immense gold there. There's truly
Mhm.
so much wisdom and healing that can
Yeah.
take place.
Absolutely. And this is why I love memoir. So, like, memoir is my jam. And that I'm a reader of fiction. I love fiction. And I also help in other nonfiction spaces. I would never claim to be an expert in fiction. So, I've got maybe one client right now who's using her autobiographical story to kind of exaggerate and fictionalize into a novel, but it's so based in her own truth. And that's been
Mhm.
like an exception. Um, so I really like to hang in the nonfiction space, but like ultimately memoir. I can't say that enough. And that is because memoir is entirely based on the human experience, the vulnerability, the life lessons, the insight, how we turn what I call pain into purpose,
Mhm.
or past into art, whatever catchphrase you want to throw in there. Because I feel like when we capture our human experience, it helps us to heal,
Mhm.
right? But then when we've activated our own healing, we also activate somebody else's.
Yep.
And I feel like if we can do that, if we can set off that ripple effect, then there really is hope and change for the world.
Yes.
Because one person reaching one person can make a difference, right?
Yep.
Because you don't know how that's going to affect their life and how they're then going to affect somebody else's. So
Yeah.
I am like totally here. I'm totally here for memoir. I think that I'm here. Originally, I used to think that I was here because I was a writer. And now in the last year, I've recognized that writing is my medium, books are my byproduct, but really what I'm here for is to see and hear and witness people, their experience, their lessons, their pain, and to hold that space in that container. And that is the work.
Yes. And I mean, holding space for people is one of the most important things that we can do, right? When we actually learn how to hold space for others too, we begin to really hold space for ourselves. It's this
Mhm.
back and forth reciprocal process, I think. The more that we heal ourselves, the more that we're capable of helping others heal, the more that we lean into actually like getting curious about other people, the more we
Mhm.
can get curious about ourselves. Like it really is this back and forth. And, yeah, memoir is so powerful. I want to write a memoir one day. I've actually started my memoir 3 or 4 times now. And every time I've started it in the past, I've been like, "Oh, I'm not quite ready to write this all the way through
Yeah.
because I haven't reached the point where I can teach the lesson yet." And
Mhm.
I think I'm slowly getting there. I'm a 6'2" in human design, which is like the first 30 years of your life are the gauntlet of hell, and then 30 to 50 you're sort of like processing, and then 50 on you're sharing your wisdom with the world. So maybe my memoir won't come out until I'm 50, but even fiction, like I have been so just immensely proud of Bumblebees and White Balloons because it is fiction, but it's real world fiction. It's like slice of life contemporary fiction, and it
Mhm.
gets into issues about race and racism and systemic racism and all of that. And one of my readers, who was a complete stranger, like I did not know her before publishing the book or anything like that, she came into my sphere right as I was publishing it, but she sent me a message and wrote this little review. And she said, reading this book made me look back on a prior relationship that I had with a person of color and realize that I didn't support them the way that they needed to be supported.
Mhm.
And I was like, yes, this was
I did
what the
it.
point of the book was, is
Yeah,
like
I got to them.
yeah, to get, and whether it's the racism or the LGBTQ or the pregnancy loss piece or how people handled the pandemic, like there's so much woven into the book that, people can kind of look at. And that is the power of books. That's the power
Yeah.
of words. It doesn't so
Yep.
much matter if it is fiction or nonfiction as long as it's authentic and it is
Yeah.
sharing some form of our wisdom and our healing, right? And our
100%.
first draft is always for us,
Mm-hmm.
and then the final draft is for the audience. And
Yes.
so the process of writing memoir or fiction, right? It's still nonfiction or fiction. It's all a process of looking within ourselves and
Correct.
untangling. So it's
Yeah. Well, and actually to that end, what people don't often recognize, especially as those aspiring authors who aren't studied in writing, is how similar memoir and fiction actually are from a craft and literary perspective.
right,
While fiction can be exaggerative and loosely based on truth, but also could just be totally made up, and memoir is based on the author's life, they're both using the same things in the manuscript to make it compelling for the reader, right? They're
right.
both using action, they're both using dialogue, they're both using rising tension, scene development,
Mhm.
details, narration and commentary and exposition. Memoir is meant to read like fiction, even though
Right.
subconsciously the whole time you're reading that it's actually something that happened to the person who wrote the book.
Right.
That's where I think the genres play really nicely together in the sandbox,
Mhm.
because they're crafted in this with the same, ingredients, if you will. And but yeah, ultimately the goal, right? Like the goal of any book should be to inspire, transform, provide hope, whatever it is, all the positive things. But I do think that we get there faster when there's that emotional connection
Yes.
between author and reader through what's being said in the words.
Yeah, and I think that that's where really like working with a writing coach or a creative coach of some kind can really help us move through like our own blind spots and blockages
Yeah.
because yeah, sometimes like just looking back on my own writing journey and I've only really started writing nonfiction more recently with like my sole publisher Jess and whatnot and blogs of course, but um even just looking back at my old writing, I was so in my head about like, oh, I have to find the perfect descriptive word to describe this little piece of it. That's not what matters. It's
Yeah.
really not. And it's not the perfectionism in the craft. It's the what do I really need to share here, or what do the characters need to share through me, or what is the core, the essence of what this piece is trying to inspire, transform, etc. in the world. And I've only really recently had that outside perspective to help fine tune and, get really into what I needed to share because I was so afraid of being visible, which meant I didn't even want anyone helping me look at it because I didn't want them looking at me. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that visibility for the aspiring authors out there, like getting visible with even just one other person to kind of
Mhm.
bounce with
Yeah.
is really important.
100%. People, we don't realize our own self-sabotaging behaviors until we're working with like a mirror, right? Which is
Mhm.
really, I think, a really great book coach, or publishing partner, however, whatever word you want to use, is really there to act as that mirror,
Right.
and to reflect back like what is going on here. And I think that a lot of the times, getting tripped up by the perfect word or going back to what you wrote the last time, and then revising it before you move on to the next piece. These are elements of blocking ourselves from moving forward because ultimately we're terrified of something up ahead. And a
Yes.
lot of the time, right, that has to do with being read later, which is totally directly related to what you were talking about with visibility. So it's like, okay, it's identifying like, okay, how are those saboteurs showing up for you in your writing? Like, because you might think that you're being a perfectionist, and that might be true, but like, why?
Yeah, what's that protecting?
Yeah, like what exactly are we scared of? What exactly is the fear here? With memoirists, they already can identify a lot of their fears coming in, and then we have to tackle the ones that they're not aware of, like when it comes up in those ways that they're trying to revise or like nitpick a word to death. But a lot of other times they're coming in already knowing that they're scared of what certain people are going to think about what they share.
Yep.
How to write something without pissing somebody off. Are they going to get sued if they say X? What if they can't remember the 15 things, from when they were 5? How do they navigate that and not look like a liar? So there's already a lot of pressure coming in to get it right. And when we can say, going back to something you said earlier, the way I put it is FYOE. No, FYEO, for your eyes only. That's where we're at. We are nowhere near publishing this thing for anybody else's consumption. So all of these worries that are blocking you from getting started are like 12 months away, if not more.
If not more. I mean, I wrote this in 2020. Like, this has been, and it just came out last week. So
it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So when we can like manage expectation and we can manage what the timeline looks like, and we can really get our hands around exactly what the writing process is, and it's an iterative thing that doesn't have a hard start and stop, right? Then it's like, just like let go of some of that shit, because it doesn't matter right now. It won't matter for a really long time. And by the time it does matter, you're going to feel so darn good about what you just wrote because of all of that inner work that you just did, that the fears you think that you've got now ain't going to be there.
I know. It's like, when I finally got this book in my hand, I was like, oh, this isn't even what I thought it would feel like. Because it just feels normal now. Like, oh yeah, of course I'm a published author, because I did all the work along the way. And I would not have been able to do all the work along the way had I not gotten started and stopped blocking myself from moving forward. So, as a coach and as a retired therapist, I work a lot with parts, like parts of self, and ultimately our parts of self, most of them are trying to protect an exiled part of us that is holding a trauma or a fear or a pain point. And so it's okay to acknowledge that we're trying to protect our vulnerable parts, but the vulnerable parts are the ones that have the stories to tell. So if we're blocking them from ever being viewed and we're just protecting, putting, guards up, then we won't be able to share our beautiful wisdom with the world, and we won't be able to experience that expansion.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that the vulnerable parts don't just have the stories. They actually are the ones that have the strength. They're the ones who withstood whatever it was that occurred, right? To even be able to tell the tale. So, our vulnerability, that's two words that are very hard to say back to back, is really a superpower.
Yeah.
If we could all look at it that way, and we didn't automatically fear the vulnerability or think that that makes us weaker.
Right. Yeah. Well, there we get into societal stuff, right? Like, vulnerability has been viewed for so long as weakness and something not to lean into. And I mean, that's my big mission in the world. My big purpose, I think, is literally breaking free of this old system that says, don't look at vulnerability, don't look at the shadow, we don't go there. It's really an oppression of the feminine, an oppression of the soft, the sensual, the desire, the dream, the all of that. And when we're suppressing the vulnerability, we're also suppressing our access to all of those things as well. So it really is tremendous work, being able to dive into those depths and bring it to the surface for other people to be able to benefit from. And it does have this beautiful ripple effect. I mean, again, even if that one person was the only person that ever read this book, the fact that if she goes into another, a relationship in the future with a person of color, she's going to have a different perspective now.
Yeah.
Just because I wrote this.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's the low-hanging fruit and cost-effective for people, right? Like, not because it should replace therapy or anything like that, but like a book really has so much power in a $6.99 package, or $13.99, whatever the retail price is. Like, there's so much there that you can take away from. And it's just a beautiful thing. With Dear Universe, I get it now. Something that was really interesting was I spent so much time during the build up to the publication worried and fearful of it having a horrible response. I made no room or effort to consider what it would be like if it had a great response, right? So the book goes out in the world and all of a sudden the reviews start coming in. and the reviews start coming in, and it's like, I needed this book. I love this book. Raw, emotional, honest. I read this book. I learned so many things about my wife. I read this book, and like things that I wasn't anticipating, and it was overwhelming because I didn't spend any time considering the opposite of the worst case scenario,
Right.
the best case scenario, right?
Yes.
And so it's got, all these 5-star reviews. It's got maybe 1 3-star review, lukewarm kind of response. Wasn't for them. Cool. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant for everybody. That's not the point.
My book is definitely not meant for everybody. If it got in the wrong hands, I will have hate mail coming in. Like, that's the truth.
Your book's not meant to be. And if it is, you haven't done your job. But the one thing that has come up so many times with this, and this is why I always said that there's a certain magic to this particular book, is that there have been so many times that the first sentence that I'll get is like something along the lines of, this book found me exactly when I needed it. And that's the power of that, reaching that one person, right? Yes. It found me right when I needed it. It said something that I needed to hear right now. That's what you're going for, right? And what's beautiful about a book is once it's out there, it can be found and searchable for the years to come, right? Yep. So your book isn't just making impact today or the first 3 months after publication. If you're doing your job of promoting and letting people know that the book exists, your book can continue to impact those people year after year after year, right? And how many people then over time have you made an impact on, so that you can feel really good about leaving the world a little bit better than how you found it?
Yeah. Wendy in our audience just said light bulb moments. Good. Yes. That's what we want.
We're here for.
Yeah. And that, it is this ripple effect, because someone might pick up our book and it might not be for them, but they might know someone who it is for.
Yeah. Plant seeds.
Let me pass this off to you. I bought this book. It wasn't for me. How many times have I done that with a card deck or a book or whatever that I've bought, and then 5 years down the line, I meet someone, I'm like, this was actually for you, and I've been holding it for you this entire time. We never know.
Yeah. Or you read a book and you set it aside and you're like, okay, I'm probably not going to reread it. I'm good. But somebody else comes and they're like talking about something, and you're like, I'm going to send you this book that I have, right? You just don't know how books actually transfer hands, copy to copy, or just by recommendation. And, I know as a business owner, my favorite type of client is from word of mouth referral. Right? Favorite type, because they have talked to somebody else who knows me directly. Right. And so that person is probably going to be a little bit better of a match. They already kind of know what I'm about, right? And it's no different to me than book recommendations. When somebody I know, like, and trust is like, you got to check out this book, right? Then I'm like, done, I'm there.
Yes.
And so that's what you want. You want people to be recommending your book to other people. Yes. I think that's your best marketing that you can possibly ask for.
Absolutely. For any kind of service, right? We love that. Love that word of mouth, because we want to know that we're having this positive impact on people. And what better way to know that for sure than for someone else to share? I read this, or I worked with this person, and this is the impact they had, and they could have an impact like that on you, or this book could have an impact on that. So I know we're coming down to time here. I want to really bring home a little bit more wisdom for our audience members, because I know we're both in the field of a lot of fellow entrepreneurs, aspiring authors. They've got that eye on the prize, right? They're seeing, I want a book to bring more to my business, or more to my reach, my visibility. Do you have any words of wisdom for people that might be sitting on the fence of oh, how could I really use a book for my business, or why would I really take this leap and get visible?
Yeah. Okay. So there's 2 things here. The first is that your book is not going to write itself, people. Okay. You want a book, you got to write the dang thing.
Or hire someone like you. Hire somebody
but sitting on the fence never got anybody anywhere that they wanted to go. All right. So you can't sit there and look at the book in the horizon and expect that it's going to come to you. You got to go after it. That's my very first piece. Sorry, that's a little tough love for you, but that's just the nature of the beast. But from a more practical sense, okay, what can your book do for you? I want people to consider the fact that a book is meant to open doors. That is what the purpose of your book is. People think, okay, they think more in a 1-to-1 ratio. If I spend X number of dollars producing my book, then I need to sell this many copies of my book at this amount of money in order to make that amount of money back. Stop.
I know,
Right?
I'm like, no, we're not looking at it like that.
Right? Stop right now. Number one, you got to go find out how ROI on your book actually works. We don't have time to go into it right now. The book is meant to be like the center hub of a wheel for which all these other opportunities come out. All right. So yes, book sales is one avenue, right? So you sell your book, you get a little bit of money back, and you get readers to know about your book, which hopefully gives you a review and then passes your book on. You also though want to be looking at your book as, okay, how can I use this when onboarding my clients or doing lead gen? How can I use my book when it comes to visibility, such as speaking or conferences? How can I use my book in the local market? You know, will an indie bookstore in my hometown carry the book? Will a library bring me in as a speaker? What other ideas can I create using my book, okay, full of goodies that I can sell that include the book? So this is my bravery box, goes with the book, and this has in it a bravery booklet, like an unofficial companion journal to go with the book, right? Match to design, the book cover itself, and a bravery card deck, boosters to pull from to increase your bravery, taking what you learn from the book and putting it into action. All right. So now I have a whole other product line based off of the original book. Yeah. So it's getting creative. It's thinking outside the box. It's not narrowing yourself in to be like, I wrote a book, now I do book sales. Right. It's so much bigger than that. And it's all about attracting people back into your center, wherever you're playing, wherever you're hanging out.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you for that. And that's, yeah, the book is just opening yet another door for you ultimately, and you get to decide what's on the other side of that door. And the more creative you get, the more fun it is. So have fun with it and get off the darn fence. Your voice deserves to be heard.
Be brave. Be the book. Get into business.
I love that this episode has this whole slogan.
It's perfect.
It is. So thank you so much for this conversation. I know it is one of the first of many, and we're manifesting. We've planted the seed for a writing retreat.
Yeah.
In Vermont, because I've been wanting an excuse to go to Vermont, and then I found out you were there, so I was like, okay, let's do this. So if you're watching this and you're like, I want to go to a writer's retreat in Vermont, hit us up so we know, and we give you an early bird rate.
Yes,
do it
100%.
So until next time, thank you so much for joining me today. And if you watched this, I know we had some people leaving some comments, but if you watched the replay, #replay, let us know what you thought. And don't hesitate to reach out to either of us to continue the conversation, to talk about our books, your books, our mutual dreams, our retreat, whatever speaks to you. We are here to serve. Thank you so much.